If elected to the federal government, what will you do to rein in the premiers of each of the states and make this Australia again and not individual states? I recently became a citizen of Australia, not Victoria, and I'd like to be able to go anywhere. Thank you. I'd like to be able to go around Australia and not just Victoria. Thank you.
Look, I think that is a very fair question, because most Australians, and particularly most Victorians, have been a little uncertain as to where the real power has lied over the last couple of years. It was a state government that said we couldn't move more than 5 kilometres from our home, or that we couldn't open our business, or our kids couldn't go to school. And yet it was the federal government that was picking up the bill for a lot of those programs, like the COVID disaster payment, like the JobKeeper program, the cash flow boost, and many others. There is no doubt post-COVID, post-election, that we will need to sit down and better understand how that response was undertaken and how we can have an alignment between the federal government and the states. But constitutionally, the cold hard reality is that the states do have primary response in terms of these pandemic powers. But for many Victorians, because we went through such a long lockdown, they have been asking the question, what more could the federal government have done? And the reality is, through National Cabinet, we tried to find as much of a common ground as we could, but it was really difficult because ultimately the states had a lot of the power.
Dr. Ryan?
I agree with you, Nolene, and I think that at a time of great anxiety for this country, facing the biggest threat that we've ever had, let's face it, with COVID, what we really needed was a non-partisan effort by the government of the state and the country. I believe that the reason the states stepped up in the way that they did, which for me, in my experience, was unprecedented, was because there was a leadership vacuum at a federal level. We needed the government to do three things. We needed vaccines, we needed quarantine, and we needed them to look after aged care. They did none of those three things in as effective or rapid a way as we needed them to do. I can tell you, as someone working in a public hospital at the time, you could see the tsunami coming. You felt helpless and angry. And I think that as the member of Kooyong, as an independent, not tied to a party machine and non-partisan, I will be able to work effectively with the state government and with the council for the people of Kooyong.
Australia, Kieran.
We're almost out of time.
Yeah, but Australia has one of the highest vaccination rates now in the world, in the top 10 of the OECD. We have the third lowest mortality rate from COVID in the OECD. We've avoided the morgues of New York that they saw there. Around 40,000 lives would have been lost in Australia if we'd seen the average loss of life that we'd seen around the world. And I said we've had one of the strongest economic recoveries anywhere in the world. We had challenges with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Everyone knows and understands that. But a decision that we've taken as a government is to partner with the Victorian government to establish an mRNA vaccine manufacturing facility here in Victoria. There was no rule book for COVID, but if you look at vaccination rates, mortality rates and unemployment rates, we've done pretty well.